Welcome to the Lost Signals Reviews, the American Film Institute's Top 100, where we critique the supposed 100 greatest American movies of all time. Join us as we decide if they're worthy of the Mott's Top 100.
Or Mott's.
Well, welcome back, pilgrims, to the Lost Signals. Covers the AFI Top 100, and tonight we are doing, as might be implied, John Wayne movie and John Ford, The Searchers, number 12 on the motherfucking AFI list, which came out in 1956. I am your wandering desert horse rider, Scott Thurlow, and I'm joined tonight by my friends Stephen Hermosi.
Still searching for a good movie in here.
Dr. Senator Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Hello.
And our resident Western expert and aficionado, Sam Motti.
And I have found a good movie in here, and we're going to talk about it.
I hope you're about to tell us about it. So with that, I believe E may have a log line for The Searchers for us.
John Ahab and the Great White Comanche.
Sounds about right. And
I actually read something today that compared him to Ahab.
Yep. You can see the Moby Dick parallels, I think, and we'll explore that. So, but with that, E, why don't you expand upon the actual plot of The Searchers?
In a prequel to the movie Taken,
A proto-Taken, if you will.
John Wayne is a good old boy Confederate back from the war, returns to his brother's farmstead, which is attacked by the Comanche, and he spends the rest of the movie with his sidekick, Martin, tracking down the Comanche to rescue the long-lost maiden who's been captured. And they go on adventures and beat up a fake suitor, in a sense, for Martin's love. But it's a revenge flick. And that's what it is at its core. Overall, I have my issues with this film. One is that inherently it is a prototype of the... I think that you should remake it with Liam Neeson.
I said that, and I agree.
And that they can be quality, enjoyable films, but I don't think anyone would ever suggest that these are great films. And I don't want to tie in how offensive I found certain stylistic elements to this, or portrayals of certain races. But it's a generic kind of rescue the girl tale. So I'm somewhere between a 1 and a 2. I want to give it a 1 because of how upsetting. And I'm leaning towards a 1 because, especially midway through the film, it starts diverting into a lot of side stories that sometimes match with thematics and sometimes don't, and sometimes turn slapstick. But it just might also be my look in retrospect back on things that have become cliche since then. So I'm willing to hear you guys out, but by no means am I giving this a 3.
Certainly, I'm somewhat in the same boat. So if we can sometimes do our division, I would give it a 1.25. I guess maybe a 1.5 at best. So I don't know how that cuts up. I'm between a 1 and 2 as well. And maybe the points, the things that I find disagreeable about it will possibly be spread out into other questions as well. But yeah, you're right. It's a revenge tale. He comes home from the Civil War, comes back to his family. The family's attacked by Native Americans who are depicted as the villains. And he goes on a revenge journey to go track them down and at least ostensibly either kill them and or rescue his 10-year-old niece, who by the end of the film is 15 or 16 or whatever.
15.
And it's the quintessential, I suppose, right? That the whole reason it's fucking even on the AFI is apparently, allegedly, it is the culmination of John Ford and John Wayne's collaboration together from the era. And again, maybe we'll say more about that, but plot wise, what happens in this story / film, I'm okay with giving it a 1. Can be talked up to a 2, maybe at max. So that's where I lie. What do you guys think?
As As far as the plot, I
Yeah.
would say the plot's, yeah, I mean, the plot's not super great. I mean, it's based on, apparently it's based on a novel. I forget the name of it.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is he conquers kind of like when Ethan comes back, it's been a while since the Civil Wars ended.
Right.
And he's been doing God knows what. And he's got Yankee dollars that have no marks on them. Like they're just shiny and brand new. And everybody's like, what the hell's this guy been doing? And and I think the movie's about him. Part of it is about him getting over his rage and his racism. I mean, like he's ready to like put this girl out of her misery because she's a goddamn Comanche. You know, she ain't even a human anymore. And then at the end, you know, he does what he did at the beginning when he loved her, picks her up, and he's like, I'm a male
motherfucking
prototype.
John Wayne,
I'm
Sam.
a male prototype.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, that's dated for sure. But part of it is that he wants to kill her because he's racist and he hates the Comanche, and she's kind of become one of them. I mean, she speaks the language and tells him to go away, and then he doesn't kill her. And Martin's not there to stop him either, which is important.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's part of the plot. So I don't know. What do you think, Steve?
So it's interesting. I think I'm gonna like leave a lot of that stuff to other questions. In terms of the plot, I thought it was all right. Like not great by any means. Just in terms of like just the way that the narrative worked, it was you know, you have the setup of John Wayne coming back or Ethan coming back, Uncle Ethan coming back, and everybody missed him, and it's kind of a mystery where he's been. Like, the war ended 2 years ago or whatever, and where the hell you been since then, and all this stuff. And then most of the family gets killed, or taken, and it's on him.
Did you say taken?
It's on him, and yeah, exactly. It's on him and Martin to go and find them, and that's a lot of the story is about his relationship with Martin. And I guess the idea is supposed to be that like through this, and this might go into themes a little bit, like he changes slightly, but like the problem is he doesn't. He's kind of a fucking asshole the whole time. That may be going.
Yeah, that's so general, though. Asshole. That's such a generalized term. He's less of an asshole in very specific ways.
He's very John Wayne from the start to finish.
Yeah, well, that is true. But I think the story is probably good enough for me to give it a softer 2. In terms of that, I'm going to take off points in other places for sure. Yeah. But it's got the beats that I think it needs in order to be like a complete story, and I think that it shows a little bit of. There are parts that are interesting in terms of the plot, scattered here and there throughout, but not all that often. You're right. It is like kind of a generic story, but the thing is, it probably wasn't all that generic at the time. Although maybe to a degree. There's always the save the girl story, right? Like
right. You can take that somewhat into account, sure. Like no problem. Go on.
But regardless of that, I don't begrudge you guys your ones at all. But I think I'm gonna give it a very soft 2 in terms of plot. I have a lot to say about other parts, but I think that like those will go into themes and style and some other stuff, antagonist, protagonist.
I would just say one part I will concede is weak in the plot is the whole Martin and Lori love story. That's kind of weak.
It could be cut out. I think.
We writes her once in 5 years. Like, get the fuck out of here.
And she's like, all right.
Yeah.
Keeping this.
Well, I guess I'll always love you.
I did find that amusing part, but I agree. Like, it could be like it's sort of superfluous.
And there's the Hollywood thing of that's he's in an area where there's no people, and like he just happens to be childhood friends with a very beautiful woman.
Yeah,
which is just so Hollywood.
So Sam, I didn't consider Ethan a redemptive arc for Ethan. I think that the point you made is very true to what the intent of this was, because I was looking at Martin's growth as a character, and I wanted Ethan to be punished at some point. In fact, I felt that perhaps Martin killing Ethan to save Lori or Debbie or whatever would have been a better turn. Where Ethan is so consumed with his, I viewed him as an Ahab, as the reference to my initial part. And that to me, it felt that at the end, if Ethan was the protagonist, him carrying the white whale back and not getting punished for his thing, but the problem, but seeing it as a redemptive arc does change my view of the plot, and it is there. Whether it's effective or not.
Oh my god! Oh my god! There's a cat.
Yeah, so that might have boosted me up to a 2.
All right. I mean, I'm probably gonna also, at the end of the day, come down in the same way. Like, all right, the plot it's not like you can't follow it. It does its thing. It goes along, and it has. I think I would say like, if not 3 acts, 4 acts that make sense and are parsed out and are paced out good enough. So like maybe a 1.5 again, like I said, like up from a 1.25, which then of course rounds up to a 2. Yeah. Yes, a softer one of the softer ones, softer 2s, that is to say, that I've given out.
Oh, but, yeah, I agree.
But I still think that's probably about right where it lies. So what do you think, Steve-O? What's your final?
Yeah, I'm going to stay with a 2.
Yeah, and Sam?
Just a soft 2.
Soft 2 as well. Sam?
Oh, with a hard 2.
Hard 2, yeah. A more forceful 2, but
solid.
Still, right, solid 2, but still not quite enough for a 3. But yeah, like I guess we're agreeing. Like for the most part, it holds up. It works. Again, it's not incomprehensible, and it does its thing. So,
and again, I'm mostly a 2 because of that whole love thing.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I got you.
No, I agree.
Doesn't work.
Yep, I think we can agree on that specific point.
Goofy is the word.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so that means I should move along to themes, and boy, do I have some things to say. I'll try to condense. And yes, one of you brought it, I think Sam, you mentioned it. Yes, it is a work of its era and of its time. So, like, we have to take that, I guess, with a grain of salt.
Of another era altogether.
Yeah, it's almost like doubly removed, right? Yeah, exactly, right? So, even with that, like, I was saying to E, like, literally during the watching of the viewing of this, I was like, sometimes I can't, like, because the Western aesthetic has been done and parodied and subverted back into hell and back so many times since this film, then I just couldn't take some of it seriously, even though the film itself, of course, was taking itself. It's a straightforward film. There's nothing ironic about it. John Ford was very straightforward, like very earnest about what he was doing with this stuff. But there are some very distasteful, very cringe-inducing moments to this film, especially as applied to thematically what the message of it is as a whole. So I'm looking at a 0, and like only because of that fact, like it might be unavoidably that we're looking at it through the lens piece of history. So I just don't know. Like I can't avoid that, but things came off very, very uncomfortably throughout it. So that's how I initially viewed this question, and why I'm probably leaning towards a 0. With that, what do you boys make of it?
Go ahead, Sam.
All right. Well, you can't unknow what we know now about the mistakes of how we thought back then. Sure. And so it can't not bother you, because especially like there's, I don't know, what did you call it? Red face, the whole Chief Scar being played by a guy who's who's literally an Aryan.
Yeah, he's a German guy.
Yeah, he's got bright blue eyes. Like that's the first thing I noticed. I was like, wow, that guy. But also, you have a lot of misogyny. Even when Lori, who
bad stuff, man.
Lori turned me on a little bit. She kind of was like a Karen Allen from Raiders of the Lost Ark, kind of tough. Uh-huh. I'm tough with you boys. She didn't do any shots, but you thought maybe she could have. Sure. But I thought. But like part of when she was being tough was, we women, we wash all your drawers all the time. You can't scare us. We're always sewing and washing. We're tough. And it was just like, oh my gosh. And, there was just so many moments like that where they just kept on being like, okay, like, look, the Native American squaw wife that he had for like a hot second before she was genocided. Essentially,
kicked down a hill and then genocide.
Yes. I mean, own husband. I wouldn't kick you out of bed. He literally kicked her out of bed.
Uncomfortable moment there, man.
And John Wayne thought it was hilarious.
That was
and then
I feel like that was
her.
supposed to be the biggest laugh of the film, right? Like that part right there.
Maybe during the wedding scene.
Or that, yeah.
It was supposed to be comedic, but it came off as like horribly cruel for no reason. Like,
I'm sure at the time it came off as comedic.
sure, that's the problem here, Sam. Is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can't unknow that.
But regardless of that, like what I look at as like kind of the theme of this, or what I wanted to be the theme of this movie, is kind of what it seemed like it was gearing up to until the very end, was the fact that Ethan, John Wayne's character, is kind of a like unredeemable asshole. Like he was just an unredeemable like dickhead. He was a jerk to everybody.
His own family.
He was willing to kill his niece just because she had been kidnapped and raised by this other group of people.
Subverted.
He had no idea, like no one in this fucking entire movie had any idea how to be in a relationship with any other person. Like whether it was, you guys got like vibes that John Wayne was having sex with his brother's wife, right?
Yes, absolutely.
From the opening fucking scene, dude. Yes, thank you for saying that.
There's the stairs that are uncomfortable. There is one thing I noticed in the last time, right before he leaves to go see what happened to those cattle, which is, now I won't get into the Star Wars stuff yet, but that's a parallel. But I noticed that she has his Confederate coat, and she's like petting it.
Yeah,
like it's a cat.
There's all that stuff
set up as Steve-O. Sorry, yeah, I'll back you up for sure. That was like it was very heavily implied.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like it was kind of weird that never really came into anything. Like that there was no.
Maybe that added to his rage. Maybe that was supposed to explain part of why he was like shooting all those buffalo and going. He was going. Everybody was trying to stop him at some point.
But that works against his redemptive arc then.
But what really bothers me about this is like he seems like if they had just gone with this guy's an irredeemable son of a bitch and like ended the movie with that as the message, I would have probably given themes a 1, or at least been much closer to it.
Sure.
But the way that they ended is like, oh, because he decided not to kill her after he was like stopped from doing it 3 times.
Now he's
by,
a fucking
like,
hero,
Martin.
I guess. Yeah.
Now he gets to have a happy ending, and now he gets to like, whatever.
Kind of. But he does. You notice at the end, they all go in the house. It's the exact opposite of the opening. In the opening, the family comes out of the house to welcome in Ethan, and at the end, they all go into the house, and Ethan kind of realizes, all right, I'm done. And he goes off into the sunset.
To the literal sunset, yes, exactly, Sam.
Yeah.
Sure. But I don't know.
So he's done at the end.
It's still not enough. Like, and I think it's going to flow into like bleed over into protagonists in a second. But it's just, I said to E again as we were watching it. If John Wayne gets killed somehow, either by Martin or in some other way, I will give this film more credit. But like it
almost happened.
It's not going to. Yeah. They teased you about it, but I was like, no, wait, they can't, because it's fucking a John Wayne film. They're never going to kill John Wayne in his own fucking film.
So if I could quote John Wayne, I would say that'll be the day.
Yeah, that's so fucking great. Well, that'll be the day they kill me in my own film. Right? Sure, but that means like it's just not the redemptive stuff, which again I think we'll speak about. Fill out more in a second. It is relevant here, I think, and it's just not enough for me to give themes a 1. I just can't, in all good faith.
I hate ascribing intent to people, but I actually going to say Roger Ebert had an interesting thing to say about this, with the fact that he understood that there was this subtext here of John Wayne being racist, a womanizer, all of that, but he himself said that perhaps it was John Ford who didn't have the
balls to go.
That's the less polite way of saying that. But it does feel that there was an intention somewhere, but they backed off of it.
Yeah.
They didn't have, didn't believe in the message enough or were afraid to. And that makes it no matter what, whether they were trying to show racism, it's still like,
they tried to shadow.
This is the mark.
I guess I'll rephrase it. They tried to shadow a line, but they didn't commit one way or another, so it comes off feeling very flat.
So they like stumbled around it. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a good
I agree.
Kind of how I felt about it, which is why I'm probably going to give it a 0. Right, like there was a very strong ending, like dangling right out there, and they were too scared to have a sad ending to grab it,
go for it.
Yeah. And I think that's what happened. Or, John Ford wasn't ready to like allow that to happen. In
Maybe he was intimidated by John Wayne himself or something, but like, yeah.
Also, the idea of Debbie not wanting to return was actually more of a prominent thing in the novel, from what I've read. Because it's actually based on that's the life she knew, and she was actually very upset when the Rangers came to take her away. So they kind of gave up any of that nuance. And
lost a lot of relevance there,
with having her. Please take me back.
It's exactly the same, right? They flirted with it for a moment, and then the moment that they actually grab her, she's like,
and fell back.
He dropped it hard.
Yep, exactly. Both they fell back in the status quo, and they're like, well, I guess that's good enough. Like, sure, like,
I wish they had gone harder on the themes that they established earlier in the movie.
Yeah, there's no follow through. Like they tease it, like, okay, maybe if they do this or that might like make it over the line for like a meaningful, impactful message for it. But I don't think they got there. So
that might be the result of a compromise between John Ford and John Wayne.
Sure. Yeah, like that could be
who was known as a very conservative, even for that time, a very conservative person.
So maybe behind the scenes in real life that might be the reason that is prevented from doing so. But I think that means it's a 0, at least for me.
Yeah. It hurts the story. Sure.
All right. So, real quickly before we go on to antagonist, we're going to hear starting now, and from now on, we're going to hear from our friends, our buddies over American Slacker Podcast, which I'm wearing a shirt of, Matt and Jesse. Here's a word from them. Check them out, and we'll be back in a sec.
Hey, this is Matt.
And Jesse.
We host American Slacker Podcast, your weekly rundown for weird news, entertainment suggestions, and unique games.
Every other week, we bring on guests from all walks of life, like comedian Mark Forward of Letterkenny.
Yeah, we just call it tuna up here. We're pretty clear that it's a fish.
And NYC stand-up powerhouse Ian Fidance.
I want to fucking punch you in the fucking face with positivity and fun, motherfucker.
Actor Brandon Crane of Stephen King's It.
Because a lot of the work that I did, like Wonder Years to It, they were all very, period 50s, 60s, and, chucks were all the rage.
And Art the Clown from Terrifier, David Howard Thornton.
They also had to make a mold of my face while I was there, so that was kind of claustrophobic in itself.
Musician Dan Simons of Just Surrender.
First time ever going out on tour, you remember every stop.
And Nick Thompson of Hit the Lights.
All the stuff that I think that people go through life, and it's just like my outlet for that.
Watch the video version of American Slacker on our YouTube channel and listen to our show on your favorite podcast app.
New episodes every Wednesday. Visit our website, aspodcast.com, for everything American Slacker.
That's it.
There you go.
All right. So it's now back to we're going to go into antagonists of the Searchers. And Sam, who is the antagonist of the Searchers? Who or what?
So I would say there's kind of two. There's a who and there's a what. There's Chief Scar, obviously, because he kidnaps Debbie. And I think there's Ethan's rage. And you could also say his racism, but they're kind of like the same thing. But like his rage keeps coming up. I mean, like there's so many. There's when after they get chased by the Comanche across that river, and they're shooting them, and then they defend themselves, and then the Comanche start, trying to retreat and collect their dead, and he's shooting them as they're collecting their dead, and he gets stopped. That's the one part where his rage sets him apart from everybody else in a negative way. And there's a whole bunch of moments, I won't go over them, between Martin and him, where Martin is like the voice of like, hey, have some humanity, and his rage is just like, I've got to. And you kind of know, like, he is, throughout the movie, Ethan is damaged goods. He didn't come home after the Civil War. He just wandered around for like 2 years. Mm-hmm. And he's got all this money. He's still got, all of his jacket and his saber and all that stuff. Like he's got the 1,000-yard stare. He's got all that shit that they talk about. And nah, man, like he's totally like, I think his demons, basically, I would say his demons and Chief Scar, who kind of represents his demons as well.
Personification of them, right? To some degree,
yeah. Yeah, I like that. I think that you're absolutely right. Those are two things. Scar's the actor that plays him notwithstanding, I think that is an interesting antagonist, and maybe one of the more interesting when you actually get to fucking see him and not like have them racistly chase him around and like ask about him and shit. But when you actually get to see his character and like he's like throwing barbs at them, like he's an interesting dude in as much as they would let him be in this movie. And I think that there is something to this character that's probably a large reason of why this movie is looked upon so highly, because I think that within the confines of what was allowed for a character like this in this movie, there's actually a decent amount there. And then in terms of just, Ethan's own boiling rage, yeah, it does feel antagonistic all the time because, as I've mentioned a couple times, probably outside of this podcast, like none of these characters can seem to control their emotions at all in the least bit. So it comes boiling to the top at a moment's notice and like just feels very annoying most times. Like
it's grating.
Yeah. But I feel like all the characters have this, like these moments of this, like just,
and no, you're right.
Exuberance, like almost stage play, like, like overacting that happens like constantly throughout the movie. And it is draining and just fucking annoying a lot of times.
I'm with you.
So I don't know where I'm going to land on this one, but what do you guys think?
I'll let you speak.
Two of the themes on the discussion with it didn't have the strength of his convictions. I don't know have you seen the movie The Kingdom? But in it, they're trying to delve into the cyclical violence of like Middle Eastern policy, both on the West and it's a more modern film, and I feel that they touch upon it here and there in this film. Yes, Scar has his own scars, dude. But both his sons died, and that's why he seeks out vengeance. But then, for any nuance, the ending it's almost, I feel like, a studio interference type thing. We're just going to strip him of any characterization and turn him into the generic cowboy monster. And I can't reward that. No matter what they were attempting to do beforehand, they, again, gutted their entire... him kicking the woman down the hill was what broke was the straw on this. But I just felt that any nuance they were trying to do was utterly lost by the end. And nor was it for a purpose either. It wasn't to turn this into a generic cowboy movie to make a point. It felt like they, whether it was John Wayne saying, no, I want to go out the hero or something like that. So I can't give it a 1.
This one's still tough because, Sam, you made a really good point that, like, yes, like trying to remove my distaste, like trying to do it as objectively critically as possible. Yes, I felt that John Wayne's character as Ethan, like, had that rage and like that hatred inside him, which drove him. Like that was his motivation throughout most of the story, if not all of it. And Scar, like the commander, was set up as like a good, like, like sort of mirror to him in a sense, like a foil even. Yeah, exactly. But then, but because they dropped the ball a bit, but I don't know, like, I'm super tough about it. At first I thought I was going to be definitely giving this a 0, but you guys both made very good points for conflicting scores for it. So I'm closer than I was before. So Steve-O, you have anything convincingly either way? What do you think? What are you leaning towards?
I don't know. I think that I'm going to give this probably a 0. I was really, really, really on the fence earlier.
I'm with you, buddy.
And You're right though, Ian. Like that, if they had made Scar into the villain that he should have been by the end of the movie, if they had ended this right, it would be an easy one for me.
But they dropped the ball. I think.
But I feel like he did become this like generic caricature.
Yes.
In the very end,
Yeah,
and that is going to be the biggest thing because they also dropped the ball on the other antagonist. I think at the end of the movie where
he learned nothing, didn't change.
Yeah, it didn't feel like John Wayne learned anything from his like horrible like inner angst. It feels like him being this person allowed him to save his niece by the end, and I was like, that's not the lesson you should be learning from this, like. So
I mean, he definitely it was a low bar that he crossed. He was like, I won't be racist against Native Americans in the case of this white girl.
yeah, I mean, exactly.
Who is related to me?
Yeah, it's
super low bar. I'm not going to kill this woman.
And I feel like Scar turned out to just be a plot point because if you notice, who is the one who softened Ethan's rage, and that's Martin Pauly, also known as Proto-Luke. And who killed Scar? Martin Pauly.
Yeah.
So like they just kind of like threw that really quick like metaphor, and like he kills that, and now John Wayne's this, and so yeah, I thought it was, and they didn't go far enough with Scar. Like, more into like what did his sons do? Like, what were his sons like?
Yeah, they gave us the Vegas backstory. I think the character point, Steve-O, is going to push me over the edge for a 0. Is that also going to be the same for you, Sam? Like, what are you rating this?
For antagonists, I would say 0 because they could have gone much farther with both his rage
and that too.
Scar.
Yeah, yep.
Scar's depth.
Yep, I think we agree upon that. I think we talked it out, and that is going to be 0s. All right, so let's go on to John Wayne himself, Pilgrim, Stephen Amosi, Ethan Carter, whatever his fucking name is.
Ethan Edwards. Yeah, this is interesting. I think that you can make a point for Martin to be also a protagonist of this.
Okay.
And in fact, they change each other. I know
it's tough. Another tough one, right?
They both graded on me at many points during this, but I may give this a 1, taking into account what you said earlier, Sam, about his. It's possible they're trying to do like a character arc with him. There's definitely a character arc with Martin. Throughout, even though he's like kind of a shitty person in terms of, like I said, no one knows how to be in a relationship in this movie, whether it's like a friendship or a fucking like Martin sending one letter to his girlfriend for 5 years.
Like Mrs. Jorgensen, she's got that shit down. That's about it. She's the only one.
She's the one who's rock solid.
To be fair, he didn't know how to read or write, so it took him.
And Mrs. Jorgensen was a teacher, so she knew how to read and write and everything. She was the smartest.
She could read real good.
Yeah, real good.
Real push it.
That guy, that was like they were being like, I guess because it was the 50s. That character seemed like they were anti-German with him. He was like, by golly, I raise pigs now.
Again, we'll get to that, but you're right. Like, thank you for mentioning it. Because
Lars, yeah.
Something to say about that, but protagonist, as a whole,
I don't like John Wayne's character in this, but that doesn't mean he's not necessarily an effective protagonist. And
precedent for that.
I think that they do enough for me to give this. It's not going to be a very strong one, but unless I hear a argument, which I may, for a 0 on this, that I can get behind, I'm probably going to give it a 1.
So I wrote down 0 in my score initially for Protag. Now, having said what you said, and I guess most of the credit is going to go to Martin's character, I think, on this, which is why I may just, again, in the same vein, Steve-O, limp over the line for a possible 1. Yeah, you don't have to like John Wayne as a character or Ethan as a character, but at least you do know his motivations, and they do set him up as such, and you understand why he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
Whether or not you agree with it, that may be like somewhat separately, but I think it's again, it's not like it doesn't make sense. It's not like they didn't follow through for the most part, even if it could have been done better, as we said.
Well, they botched the landing, but beyond that,
So I'm just saying those reasons might be enough for me for a 1. But what do you guys make of it, Sam and or E?
I'd give it a 1 because I do like I think what would help us relate to Martin better is if we had any idea how old that guy was.
Like 25 or so.
Is he though? But that's what you're thinking now in the 21st century. I mean, like they're out here in the middle of nowhere.
True.
Like
he's 17, man.
You could be riding a horse from 5
Sam, that's
and
really
shooting a gun
question.
at 7.
He could have been like 16 when we start, and now he's like 21 at the end of the film.
Yeah, I mean, what are the clues that we get? He's rescued before he can remember who Ethan is,
right?
By Ethan, and then the only like real guide that we have as to how long Ethan's been gone is he mistakes Debbie for I forget her what's
Lucy, I think.
Lucy, and so Lucy is. I don't know how old, but she is just starting to court that boy, Brad, where they're kissing.
Brad Jorgensen.
Yeah, Brad Jorgensen.
Yeah.
Harry Carey's son, by the way, plays that
Harry
guy.
Carey Jr., yeah.
Yeah.
Harry Carey.
But
anyway.
Yeah, no, I it's a soft one.
I think I agree with that. But at the end of the day, it might be the softest one ever, but it's still just enough for that.
It's that
right?
50s cheese.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Whoever brought up the fact, I think it was you, Steve-O, that Martin, if as a protagonist, will push me over to 1. I think not Elton John, John Wayne.
Very different.
Yeah. John Wayne alone would not have pushed me over, but Martin does. But I just want to say, it took me until they told me it's been 5 years. I had no idea how much time had passed.
Yeah.
This movie.
The thing is, maybe this comes later, but
I thought it was a couple months until they said that.
Just real quickly, like in terms of like style, like something like they made that unclear, but like other shit was very clear. It was very odd, yeah. Like the time gaps, like
they needed to grow beards. That's what needs to happen.
You can put it together like well enough. So like they spent a lot of time on other exposition, but not enough time on telling you how much time had passed.
If they didn't measure it in 5 years, even with the aging of the female character, I would still have said this took like a week.
Yeah, right.
But
sure.
Nonetheless, it's getting a 1.
All right.
Yeah.
So with that, E, why don't you go on with the secondary characters?
All right. Some of them work, some of them don't, but some of them are memorable. The Reverend Captain Deputy
Reverend Captain Texas Ranger
Samuel Johnson Clayton.
Yes.
He had more personality than John Wayne and Martin combined. I actually enjoyed every time he was on there. I enjoyed him being a foil to John Wayne, being kind of a moral center for this. While he was on there, I actually think that it probably would have been a better film if he were there to play off of Ethan's morality. I also want to say that the random Mexican guy came into the scene with me going, "Oh God, they didn't," making the most stereotypical, and then
he was the least stereotypical.
He subverted every expectation I had for that, where they actually made a very intriguing character out of his short screen time, and I think those two, and in general, the Funderman and all, like
Funderman.
Oh yeah, a lot of these characters had they did more than I expected from a Western with fleshing out a secondary characters.
Yeah.
Now I will generally agree. Like I think the ones you brought up do elevate it, but even like the families, like the Jorgensen family, Sam, as you mentioned, like I think even the wedding thing, Charlie the suitor who wants to marry or whatever her name is, not
Charlie McCory.
Yeah. Charlie and Lori, like whatever, like that sort of triangle thing. And like even the posse at the beginning, which yes, they dropped off of, like Captain Reverend, whatever was part of that.
They make appearances.
But I'm just saying, like I think what it is that the characters, the secondary supporting ones, filled out the world well enough that it was believable and it worked more than it didn't for the most part. So I'll give him a decent amount of credit on that and probably give him a 1. So good, guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think I also liked his name was Mose.
Yeah.
And I kind of actually thought it was kind of, for the time, it was progressive when he was like, "Do you guys think I'm crazy?" And they're like, "No, you're just sick and hurt." Like,
sure. It wasn't as
I was like, "Wow, they didn't stigmatize him."
Sure. It wasn't outright. You're right, Sam. It wasn't an outright joke. Like, even if it was a little uncomfortable, at least they handled it with some amount of respect, I guess we'll say, right?
Yeah. I think, and maybe they did this on purpose, I feel like the family, you meet them at the beginning, those are some pretty lame characters, but then you realize that they're also characters that are immediately getting murdered.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you don't want to make them too much. You don't want to have people miss them too much.
But you also want them to hit all of the points to make them, you actually understand why Ethan gives a damn about them.
And that's why I think they showed maybe there was something between him and his sister-in-law.
Yeah.
And then also just in general, 2 children are murdered. And that's just, you don't really need to develop them. They're kids and they were murdered. That's bad. That's horrible.
Yeah, that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of what you guys are saying. There were some characters that I was not that impressed with, or at least the handling of them. But for the most part, I think it's worth a 1 in terms of, especially, like you said, Ian, the Reverend Captain, Samuel Johnson Clayton, and
loves them donuts.
Does love them donuts. And the Mexican character's name is Emilio Gabriel Fernandez y Figueroa. It's a hell of a name, but yeah, he was pretty good. Played by a guy named Antonio Moreno. But yeah, it for the most part, the supporting characters were strong enough to give it 1, and I think I'm going to stick with that. Stick with you guys on that one and give it a 1.
Just a quick side note: women in this are treated terribly.
Yes,
not the best.
They are indeed.
And I was actually reading an article about the women in fridges thing, and they actually do have a young woman get raped and killed. No, not about searchers in general. Violence happening against women to motivate a men's revenge tale, and that certainly is guilty of this. But I think that
it does use that trap. Yeah,
that's something I can forgive of the time specifically. And I just mentioned characters I think broke my what I expected them to do. So
you can certainly see, like, there's that one part where they're tracking them shortly after they were taken, and then they say, "Oh, the trail shows that 4 Comanche broke off this way from the main group," and then that's when John Wayne finds Lucy
or whatever.
And you do wonder, what did the 4 of those guys do? And that's obviously, whatever they did, it enraged him beyond just her being dead. He couldn't even talk about it.
Yeah, it's troublingly. Yeah, you're right. There are moments like that throughout, like enough of them to be like, yeah, of course the female characters are not treated all that well. But they're not, like, I don't know, not the worst either. But again, I guess we'll just have to, like, begrudgingly. I know this seems like a cop out, but we said it before. Chalk it up to the sign of the times, etc. Sure, I guess.
The only one treated well was Mrs. Jorgensen.
Yeah, Actually, she was stronger than the rest, Sam.
Yes.
Which maybe not. It's not saying all that much, but at least it's saying something. Like, at least it was good enough.
Oh, and one last thing. Have any of you seen Oh Brother Artha?
Yes, of course.
Is the suitor in that based off the suitor in this?
He's a suitor.
Is it a reference?
They both fight the exact same way.
Yeah.
Have a similar accents.
Yeah.
I have to rewatch that now.
We'll think about it. We'll talk about that later. But that will bring exactly. Speaking of that will bring me to dialogue. And oh boy, I wrote down a big fat 0 to start off with. Like, it's just there. And again, like, it goes back to what I just said. We all just said, I guess that's how it was. Like Steve, you described it. We were talking off cast. Like, it's somewhat, still like over the top. Like, like again, like it's Pilgrim. Well, I'm gonna go hunt down these Indians who they're there and kidnap my fucking family. Right?
They never curse.
But you know what I mean? Like it's shit like that. And like, yes, it moves the plot along. Certainly, like can't not say that isn't the case, but it is. There's just nothing arresting about it. It's just there to be there, and the characters are saying exactly what you expect them to say, no more and no less. But that is not going to like convince me to give it a 1, at least on the outset. So with that, boom.
I would say that it's what I liked about it is they don't exactly say exactly what you would think. There's a couple of moments I wanted to look. Well, obviously, there's the "That'll Be the Day," which is, I mean, listen, they have an iconic one-liner that deserves a little credit.
There's a few moments, I guess.
But the one moment I really thought about, because I love when people are usually like, economy of words. Miss Jorgensen, as they're going out after the funeral, and she's like, oh, can you just make sure that these boys don't waste their lives over revenge? And I thought the best part of that dialogue was he says nothing to her. He just rides off. And like, yes, okay, he was being an asshole to a woman again. Yeah, but I mean, he does it the whole time. But I just like, he could have been like, oh, I'm not gonna do that, and explain like his whole, ethos.
Yeah, he could have said that'll be the day to her.
Oh yeah, or he could have overused that phrase. I thought there was several moments where they didn't say too much, and that's really the most I can say for the dialogue. Is that they didn't say too much.
Actually, I think there was one great moment of dialogue where John Wayne confronts Scar and says, where'd you learn to speak? You speak in good English or good American.
Yeah.
Or Comanche. And then in the second, later in that scene, you speak Comanche for cowboy or whatever.
Texican, I think.
Yeah, I thought that was a really well done dialogue, which also highlights how unmemorable the rest of it is. But I also want to drop down my plot to a 1 because I just remembered the middle of this movie is an entire exposition dump.
Yeah, via letter. See, I was getting to that. I was waiting for you.
Yes.
That letter was perhaps the worst bridge in a film I've seen in a very long time, and I was infuriated watching that scene. So yeah.
So first of all, you were for sure.
I'm dropping down to a 1 because of that scene. Sorry, forgot about that.
All right. Yeah, I think that there are a couple of great scenes of dialogue in this movie, as you have both mentioned, but that's all of them as far as I can tell, and a lot of it was. To me, I mean, I'm not saying your mileage may vary in terms of this, but like to me, a lot of it was at best unmemorable and at worst like just bad dialogue.
Cringe-inducing.
Yeah, in terms of like
at this point,
conversations. I feel like I have to blame a lot of it on the delivery of certain characters, like. I gave Martin, Jeffrey Hunter's character, Martin, credit earlier as a decent protagonist, but his fucking wild mood swings and like every character's wild mood swings and like inability to like prevent themselves from like going off into a fucking,
like grabs his blanket and rolls over like really aggressively.
Like really bug the shit out of me. Like anytime that like anything goes slightly against the character, they just go off into a fucking tizzy and like start ranting at whoever they're talking to. And that really drove me nuts about this movie. And I'm taking where I left the point in protagonist, I'm taking it out in dialogue in terms of that. So as you guys said, you're right. I agree. There are these moments of good stuff in there, but overall, it just didn't get me to where I can give it a 1.
Let me see if I can sort of contest it. Yeah, there are like 5 moments over the course of this movie of like okay to decent, like solid dialogue, but it's drowned out by the mediocrity of everything else to me. So I'm still sticking with a 0. Yes, but like I said, like I'll give you the film a little bit of credit. Like 5 to 10% of the dialogue is fine, is okay. The rest of it, I was like, go fuck yourself. Like it wasn't grabbing me.
Especially the courtship scenes.
Yeah.
Especially that. So Sam, are you also coming down with a 0 on this one? Or what's your score?
Yeah, I would say it's a soft 0. Like it could have been worse. I've seen I mean, you have to realize by the 50s, I mean, this genre had been so played out. It was just cliche. It was like this was like the Marvel films of the 40s the 50s.
Sure, but like, all right.
So they had so many pre-existing tropes that the audience kind of expected to be hit.
I mean, you're right. So like, I was gonna save this for later, but since you just literally just said that, maybe. But like, that's kind of the problem with it. Like, they played them, all of them, completely straight, and like, I don't know, like maybe now again, because we're 3 or 4 generations removed from the original premiere of this shit, that possibly that's the issue here. Why we don't view it as such. But I just, because you said that, Sam, I just had to throw that in here for now.
I mean, like, if you look at it like that, like, they could have subverted it. We did another movie, High Noon, that came out 4 years before this. So like, there were subversions of the genre already happening at this point.
I have spaghetti westerns.
You're right,
that was
Steve,
later
yeah.
though.
Yeah, they were a little bit later, but yeah.
I have more to say about that when we get to the end of this. But like, just remind me, I'll have a coda to that, a rejoinder. But yes,
so are we all going to 0? Sam, you're going to give it a 0?
I think it's all zeros on dialogue, and that, in fact, will move us along to Sam, the style of John Ford's movies.
I think the style is probably the part that I think holds up the most because it's timeless. And it's timeless because it's showing Monument Valley, which is an area carved out over millions of years. I mean, it's just a very strange.
Nature
like
gave
Mars.
us a very cool area to shoot movies in.
I loved everybody talks about the opening scene. You're looking out of, it's kind of like one of the shots that was debuted in like Citizen Kane, I think, with like that.
Yeah.
You're looking outside the door and you can see the wide expanse, only it's much more beautiful because it's Monument Valley. And also that same scene at the end where they do that, and all of it. I liked a little bit, it's kind of choreographed. You think about when he first comes in the house and he picks up Deborah and he's, oh, you're not Lucy, you're Debbie. And then he puts her over here. And then like, they do this. And the scene where the Reverend first comes in, there's the coffee and the donuts. And then he's going to baptize this person. Now he's going to deputize this person. And this person jumps in with some throwaway joke.
Yeah.
So like, and it's kind of hokey, but I like that. That's all the style like that was popular then.
I agree.
And they did it well.
If nothing else, like, whether or not I agree, spoiler, I don't, with John Ford as a person, he knew at least how to make a fucking film, especially from, of course, the era that he made them in, and with working with John Wayne, right? So, like, yes, the shots look great. The lighting is great. Everything about the cinematography of this film works. So I'm going to give it a 1, probably the strongest one of anything within this film. And yeah, pretty much just to build on what you said, Sam. And yeah, you can't deny how good it looks in terms of that specific angle. So
yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think that the movie looks pretty solid. If the cinematography is great, I think the music's actually pretty good too.
It's okay, fine,
classic.
I mean, classic Western style, but like, I thought it was pretty solid. And like, that's the thing, like the outfits, the costuming is really good, I thought.
Yep.
In terms of, I mean, you can see it behind me, right? Like, I think they did a good job with that. Like but what it really all comes back to is just the landscapes that they get, and like the great shots that
the
they
vistas
get.
and stuff. Yeah,
And like that's why, stylistically, that's going to be the tipping point for me. Now there's like the thematic styles, I suppose, which perhaps Ian might talk about in a moment, which you could make an argument about, which we talk about from time to time. But
I thought that was.
I'm looking at this more of like straight up what the movie looked like and what it
as a film
sounded like, and that type of thing in terms of style. And I think that Ford is, I think this movie's on this list for a reason. And I think that's a lot of what the reason is. It's just as cinema, as a film, it's really impressive looking and
art film.
Yeah. Yes.
This movie is incredibly influential, and it ain't for the plot. This is and kind of as you mentioned, Sam, the idea of like characters being introduced into scenes and distant things like that. You can actually go on Wikipedia. They have a bunch of like comparisons on there where they show you like this movie stole X movie stole from this to do that, and Scorsese stole from this or homage, I suppose. And it was influenced. Yeah, so I have to give it a 1 because you'd be, if you said it's not stylistic, you'd be lying in the face of all the evidence in front of you.
I agree. Like you have to give it credit, if nothing else, on that front. And I think again, it's the strongest point, and it looks like we're all doing that. And you're right. Like maybe it's not like it's a split between that and other things like historical purposes, but that's why at least. It should. We'll get to it in a second, but it's on the AFI because of, and to a large degree, because of the cinematography, the actual filmmaking itself. Yeah. So, all right, we'll call it 1s there. And all right, Stephen and Mosley, do you Pilgrim? You recommend The Searchers or what?
We were talking about this earlier, and we're like, yeah. So there should be before we got onto the topic of there should be a John Ford movie in the AFI. We were talking about how there should be a like straight up non-deconstruction Western on there. And there is
Western.
Shane.
Sorry. There has to be a Western to deconstruct.
Right.
You're right.
But there is, like, Shane is that movie that we saw on that we watched. And don't get me wrong, I didn't love Shane either, but I probably liked it better than this movie. And
Shane,
it's Shane. It's wild to me that this is so highly. I mean, I could see it making the list, but like, I don't know. I think it's a lot of like nostalgia that is the reason that this movie is ranked number 12 on this list, which is probably the reason that a lot of things are ranked so highly on lists on the AFI Top 100. But you know, not to say that it's the worst Western I've ever seen, but I probably wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend certainly other Westerns.
Thank you.
More specifically, like ones that deconstruct the genre, because I like that better. But you know, I would probably recommend Shane before this movie, or like
sure, and other Shane.
I don't even know, but I think that means that I gotta give it a 0 for recommendation, and yeah, so that's what I'm gonna do.
All right, Sam, I'm gonna let you talk last because again, you have now become by de facto my friend, and on our podcast, you are the Western historian in a sense, film critic. No, seriously. So
historian of Westerns.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like, yeah. Again, it's not Western. Don't look at me, buddy.
People are gonna ask me questions. I have no idea.
But the thing is, like, I'm going to give it a 0 for recommend. I understand why it is on the AFI for the cultural zeitgeist, for the impact, et cetera, as we just talked out. I don't think it should be number 12. I think it should be on the list for sure, somewhere, and like, I don't know, throw it in the 40s or 50s or whatever, like in terms of that. But that's the thing, like, but by the same token, as we just said, Steve-O, there has to have been a straightforward, unironic Western for the rest of the good Westerns to deconstruct, right? There is no High Noon. There is no other shit like that. There's no Unforgiven, right?
Jersey Wales.
Right. But on the same, and also, Sam, I think you might like this. Unfortunately, the actual best Westerns, i.e. the spaghetti ones from Sergio with Clint, are not technically not American production, so they're not qualified to put on the AFI. But they are certainly 1,000 times better to me than this film, and maybe other things like it. So that's like just an important, like a weird like quirk of how critical ratings work, I suppose. So I am not going to officially recommend The Searchers. It's all right at best. Although I certainly, again, I understand why and the point of it being on the list. I just don't recommend it. So that's it.
Nope. And to your point, there's got to be a better one out there as well. There's got to be another one from John Ford and
or Wayne
and Wayne. That's the like that's better than Searchers. So
I would give it a 1 with an asterisk. I would say if you are interested in the Western genre, it would be beneficial to you to watch this, because maybe there's not going to be one stereotypical Western that everybody's going to watch and be like, okay, now I understand the Western. Like, you have to have a critical mass of them. And this is one of them that you could watch, and you could get a pretty good idea of, how the genre operates and what are the recurring themes, and what is, what are they trying to do? How are they trying to get this across to you? And yes, it is totally, it's bygone, and its morals as well. I think that's the problem that everybody's having, is it's got bygone morals.
Yeah. Or social values, we'll say.
Yeah, and social perceptions as well.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they're not like, they don't dislike Look. They think she's hilarious, but she's a squaw, so kick her out of the bed.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. Like, the march of time has made that irrelevant.
But here's the thing: is to counter that, arguably, Birth of a Nation as film. In film, it's an important film, arguably, and they got rid of it off the AFI. Intolerance, because they're both W.E. Du Bois movies, and to the point of at that. And it's funny, Intolerance was actually a response to hate on Birth of a Nation. And I think that, yes, there are certain things about keeping the heritage, but there's also with modernizing the heritage to find better examples of similar movies. And I think that there has to be. I've seen them once upon a time, like whether like Rio Grande or something like that, that represents
the racism is an important part of it. Like, that is, I mean, that's a big part of the Western, is that you're white and you're going out there, God damn it, and ain't nothing stopping you, Pilgrim. Like, that, I think the racism is an integral part of it. It's just, it's a very uncomfortable part of it. Like, we weren't going out there invited. We were going out there uninvited.
But that's to my point. Either if you do it for one, you argue you can do it for more, or you don't do it for any and you keep the black marks with it. And
maybe I'll say, like, it's an important thing to remember, like, to learn from the lesson of history, to not repeat it. But, like, we certainly shouldn't celebrate it, right? Which is I feel like this weird, like, uncomfortable spot where this movie is celebrated to an extent, and which has that stuff, Sam.
I don't agree with the AFI number 12. Like, that seems a bit ludicrous to me. I can think of several movies that I'd rather watch.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Actually, that's the perfect
from the Western genre.
Yeah, because that's what we often do. So now we rated. I'll give you the scores in a second, but the question usually becomes: A, should this movie still be in the AFI list? I guess we're saying yes, but should it be where it is? I think we're saying probably not. It should be much lower.
Right? Definitely the latter half.
Yeah,
if it stays on the list, it should be much lower. I would say we could lose this movie, and I wouldn't be that mad about it. Throw on another Western and call it a day. But it is on there for now, and it's not like the worst Western I've ever seen either, I guess.
It's going to be on there, but it shouldn't be number 12. It should be like number 42 or some like random shit like that, like somewhere further down the list. Sure. But anyway, so yeah. So that's that question. All right, so here's the scores. I'll break it down for you. Sam, you have rated The Searchers the highest with a 6. Sivo, you and I have rated it a 5, and Ian gave it a 4 because he bumped down from plot from 2 to 1. We mostly agreed. Thematically, just uncomfortable, not enough there. Antagonist, just again, sort of same issue. Dialogue, just straight up. But we gave it points for style. We decided that because of the dual protagonist role, we give it points on that. And only Sam recommended it, and we all gave it 2 as the plot, except for you, like I said, for 1. So yeah, comes out to a 5, like a dead even 5. So that's fine. Like, it's literally middle of the road. Sure. It's a piece of Americana that exists that we have to recognize as part of our history, even if you don't agree with it, which you probably shouldn't at this time. But it's there. You know?
Yeah, I feel like there are parts that are funny, but they're funny now, and they didn't mean them to be funny.
They
were just like, oh, they were so weird.
And there are parts that like were funny then that are like horrifying now.
It's supposed to be a comedy.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So the Searchers, 5.0 even. That's where it stands. And I think with that, we will just standardly right into the sunrise, I suppose, or the sunset right now. Unless anyone else has anything last minute to say or anything you forgot. That's my thoughts. Nope. All right. Well, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. I've been Scott Thurlow, here with my fellow posse, Stephen Amosi.
Well, I'll see you later, Pilgrim.
Dr. Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Shane!
And John Wayne himself, Sam Motti.
That'll be the day.
Thank you so much. Cheers. See you next time.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Hermosi. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.